I stood by the window and watched Lauren get ready for another one of her mysterious trips to Philadelphia. The neighborhood in the suburbs was quiet and the streetlights gave off a soft glow. Her actions were becoming more and more strange, and it was bothering me like an itch I couldn't scratch. "Lauren," I asked, trying to sound casual, as she put together a small bag, "where are you really going?" As she zipped up the bag, she stopped for a moment. Her hands were shaking a little. "Just a quick trip, Bill, nothing to worry about," she said. I couldn't help but frown, and I could feel anxiety building in my chest. "But you do this every week and keep not telling me where you're going. That's not like you." If she looked at me, she didn't meet my eyes. "I promise, Bill, it's nothing you need to concern yourself with." I let out a sigh and ran my hand through my hair. "Lauren, you keep it so secret that it's hard not to worry about it. Both Bradley and Terry are becoming aware of it too," I said. She bit her lip, and a look of guilt crossed her face. "I'll talk to them, make sure they understand." Something felt off, and I knew I couldn't ignore it any longer. I had to find out why this woman kept going to Philadelphia when I thought I had married someone else. Doubt weighed on me like a heavy cloak, and I couldn't get rid of the thought that something was wrong in my marriage. If I really wanted to find out what was going on, I hired a private detective named Frank who was known for getting things done. We met in a city office that wasn't very well lit. The air smelled like old leather and cigarette smoke. Frank leaned back in his old leather chair and looked at me with cold, sharp eyes. His rough speech let slip a lifetime of secrets as he asked, "So, what's the story, Bill?" I cleared my throat, my nerves making it hard for me to speak. "Lane, my wife, has been going to Philadelphia once a week, but she won't tell me where she's going or why. Please tell me what's going on." Frank agreed and reached for a file on his messy desk. "I'll think about it, but it won't be cheap. You get it. Money doesn't matter right now. I need to know. Frank, do anything you need to. I only want to know the truth." As the weeks went by, Frank looked deeper into Lauren's secret activities. Through his phone calls and quiet surveillance, he found out the disturbing truth. Lauren was meeting up with a guy named Kyle at the Risen Hotel in Philadelphia. As I heard Frank's report, the knots in my stomach got tighter. We got together one night at a quiet coffee shop on the edge of town to talk about what he had found. Frank put an envelope on the table and slid it across to me. He said in a low voice, "Here's what I've got, Bill." When I opened the package and looked through the pictures and papers inside, each new discovery made my heart sink. There is a Risen Hotel ticket and a picture of Lauren and Kyle with their faces close together. I could no longer deny it. There was something very wrong. "That hotel, the Risen?" I asked, barely able to make out the words. "What do you know about it?" When Frank leaned in, his eyes got narrow. "That's where they meet. Kyle puts her room key under a payphone for her to find. It's not obvious, Bill." I clenched my hands because I was angry and hurt. "Frank, I want to talk to her. I want to know the truth." Frank sighed because my neediness was making him feel bad. "Watch out, Bill. Things can quickly go badly in these kinds of confrontations." I nodded, and my mind was set. We needed to find out what was going on and talk to Lauren about her strange meeting with Kyle at the Risen Hotel. With Frank's results in hand, I felt like I needed to act faster. It was time to talk to Lauren about her Risen Hotel meeting with Kyle in secret. Bradley and Terry were also on board and set out to find out what was going on. The three of us sat at the kitchen table and looked through the pictures and papers that Frank had collected. My younger son, Terry, broke the tense silence. "Hey, Dad, we can't let her do that again. We need to understand what's going on." Bradley, the older and more calm of the two, agreed with a nod. "Dad, we need to be careful. We have no idea what we're getting into. I really valued their help, and they were right to be careful." "You're right, boys," I told them with a strong voice. "We need a plan." We talked about our plans for hours, trying to figure out how to talk to Lauren without giving her away. It was an easy plan. We would sneak up on her next trip to Philadelphia and meet her at the Risen Hotel. The next night, we would confront her about meeting Kyle. "Dad, are you sure about this?" "Is it worth the risk?" asked Bradley. When I looked at my boys, I could see that they were worried. "Bradley, I can't stand this any longer. She and we both deserve the truth." Terry spoke up, and his voice was firm. "We'll have each other's backs." Kyle's wife, Beth, waltzed into the hotel entrance with fire in her eyes. She held a bag full of Kyle's clothes in her hands, and her face was twisted with anger and betrayal. She found her husband cheating on her, and now she was here to talk to him about it. "Kyle!" she yelled, and her voice echoed through the hall, making people look at her. "You lying, cheating scumbag!" When Kyle found out that he had been caught having an affair with Lauren, his face lost all of its color. It looked like Lauren was stuck between a rock and a hard place because her eyes kept jumping between us and Beth, who was very angry. As I took a step forward, I tried to keep some control. "Beth, it doesn't look like this." Beth's eyes got narrow as she looked angry at Lauren. "Oh, it's exactly what it looks like. You home-wrecking, Her voice was shaking with anger as she held out a key card. "Take your damn room key back, Lauren." Lauren thought for a moment before taking Beth's key card. Her hand was shaking. Being told that her relationship with Kyle was public seemed to weigh heavily on her, and she felt like she had no choice but to deal with the results. Terry leaned in close and asked, "Dad, what should we do now?" Still trying to make sense of the rush of feelings and discoveries, I shook my head. "I don't know, Terry, but one thing's for sure. This mess just got a whole lot messier." As Beth kept yelling at Kyle and Lauren, who stood there looking scared and guilty, the hotel lobby turned into a battlefield of feelings. With worry in his voice, Terry whispered to me, "Dad, what do we do now?" My mind was rushing as I tried to make sense of what was happening very quickly. I couldn't find an answer. "We need to talk to Lauren, find out what's really going on." We carefully walked up to Lauren. The tension in the air was almost too much to bear. I spoke more softly than before and said, "Lauren, we need to talk about all of this in an honest way." With tears in her eyes, she looked at me. It was clear that she felt guilty. I don't know what to say, Bill." Before we could get into more detail, Lauren's phone rang and she quickly picked it up. As she spoke in a low voice, her face became even more upset. "What's going on, Lauren?" I asked, getting impatient. When she hung up the phone, she looked at me with a scared and fuzzy face. "Bill, I have to go. Right now, I can't explain." Without waiting for an answer, Lauren quickly got up from the table and ran out of the hotel, leaving her things behind. As I watched her walk off into the night, I felt terrified. "Dad, we can't let her go," Bradley yelled. We ran after her quickly, but she was gone. The police were called, the hotel staff and security were told, but Lauren was still missing after all our attempts. It looked like she had vanished into thin air. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, but she wasn't there. There were no answers from the police investigation, and it was clear that Lauren had hidden herself. The mysterious departure made the mystery of what she did even stronger. As we sat in our empty house one night, Terry spoke up. "Dad, do you think she left voluntarily or was she forced to disappear?" I sighed because the question was so heavy on my mind. "Terry, I wish I knew, but one thing is for sure. We're on our own now. Things might never be the same again." As the years went by, the mystery of Lauren's abduction hung over our lives like a long, dark shadow that seemed impossible to remove. It had been 2 long years since the terrible event at the Risen Hotel, and I still didn't have answers to the questions that were bothering me. Lauren was still lost, and each day that went by made our lives feel even more empty. Our house, which used to be full of life, felt like a museum of memories, with all of Lauren's things that had never been used. Her scent hung in the air, a haunting memory of the time when we were both alive. The boys had grown, and the pain and uncertainty of their mother's sudden disappearance could be seen in their faces. Bradley broke the quiet that had become all too common in our home one evening. "Dad," he asked in a sad voice, "do you ever wonder if we were right to talk to her?" At her. I let out a sigh as the weight of doubt pressed down on me. "Bradley, I've asked myself that question 1,000 times. I'm not sure." Terry spoke up, his voice tense with anger. "But we had to know the truth, right? We knew she was lying." Nodding, I couldn't argue with that reasoning. "Yes, we did. But I can't help but wonder if we pushed her into something worse." It was hard for all of us to answer the question. It cost us a lot more than we thought it would when we came across a web of lies. As time went on, I thought about the legal steps I would need to take to change my marital status and say that Lauren was lost and thought to be dead. I was stuck in a state of confusion because I didn't know what would happen to her. One night, Bradley came up to me. He looked at me with eyes that were filled with pity and worry. "Maybe it's time to move on, Dad. We can't keep treating this house like a temple." I looked at my things, which now seemed like relics from a past life. "Yes, Bradley, our lives can't always be stuck in the past. But as I went through Lauren's things and chose what to keep and what to throw away, the pain of her loss got stronger. The mystery of what happened that day at the Risen Hotel will always be a part of our lives, along with the fear of what might have happened to her and the questions that remain unsolved."